All right, so today we're going to focus on Nektar.ai and talking about a website teardown, and we're really going to be looking at the blog or top funnel side of their site, just to kind of dive a little bit deeper into one area and talk about some of the things that Nektar is doing well and things that they could improve on. So let's jump right in. So we're going to jump over to their blog section just to get started over here. And before we get too deep into this, I want to talk about kind of what are the objectives of really this top funnel content, not just for Nektar, but in general, thinking about why are we producing blogs and what ultimately do we want people to do when they get there, is really how we should be thinking about our blog. So really any piece of content should have a specific objective of, is this to move them through the funnel? Is it to rank for SEO? Is it to, do whatever? And try not to do too much. The old saying that, if you try to please everybody, you'll please no one. Same thing here. If you try to do too much with these blogs, you'll end up doing nothing well. And so, I'd say generally speaking, the things we're trying to achieve here is, one, draw people into the site. So whether we really need to be thinking from a channel perspective of how are we getting people to this blog content, and frequently people are going to enter on the blog. So if it's SEO, that blog's going to rank. They're going to enter in on a specific blog page. If it's email that you're doing, you're posting about a couple blogs. So you have an email, it has some kind of giving a little bit of maybe an introduction if it's like a newsletter of like, hey, here are the topics, and then driving people straight to those blogs, right? Or social, same thing. You're doing a post about a specific blog that you've written or providing an insight and then a link to a blog. Again, so people are just going to enter in on this blog and then thinking from that mindset of who was I targeting with this channel, and then what's going to be like the natural flow of information after that. So one is, how are we drawing people in? And making sure we're optimizing for that, particularly SEO, right? If we're doing SEO, then we need to have the blog rank for a term. Otherwise, no matter how good the content is, no eyes are ever going to see it. A little bit different with social. If you have a good social presence, then you're not going to need to do a ton of SEO if that's not a focus for you. So you can kind of write agnostic to whether or not their SEO rankings for those specific keywords. And then same thing with email, is if you've got a captive audience, you know who you're targeting and you're aligning kind of an audience within your marketing automation platform with the type content that you're serving up. No matter which of those channels you're using, you really need to have a good understanding of content flow and topical areas. So we'll dive right into that because I think that's a great place to start, and then we'll start talking about the on-page for some of this content. So, the measurables here are going to be generating traffic to the site. How well do we get people to consume additional content, or how well do we move them from the blog now that we got them to the site to either content depth, which would be like learning more and diving deeper into blogs, or have we now created and identified a problem that the user is having or that our target audience is having? And then are we providing the ability for them to learn about specific solutions? And a lot of times these start with product agnostic, and then we get into like, okay, well, you could demo our platform, right? So if we were talking about like Tylenol here, Tylenol is for people who have headaches, right? And so we'd start by talking about all the different symptoms, right? So like, it could be dehydration, it could be sickness, it could be migraines, it could be a lot of different things that cause headaches, right? So we want to talk about all those topical areas, and then we start getting into like, well, what's the solution for a headache? You could do hydrate better, you could eat better, get more sleep, you could take Tylenol, right? You could use medication as a way, and that's a very agnostic to a solution. You're just kind of saying, here's all the things that you could do to solve this problem. And then you can get deeper into, if you had deeper content on your site and your Tylenol, then you're talking about, all right, well, what does Tylenol do versus Advil versus Aleve and so on, right? And that's where you get much more deeper into the funnel. So it's important to think about those things because that's how this content's all going to flow through. But as we're thinking top funnel, we're thinking much more about don't try and sell the product right now. Relate to the problems that people are having and show that you have knowledge about that area. And then we're going to draw them deeper and deeper in. And that's going to be the investigation part. And then last is illuminating needs, right? So this is the classic problem solution format of I've unearthed the problem so that I can now provide my solution, right? All right, so let's jump into that piece. So if we jump over to Nektar's blogs, they've got a lot of content. They've got sales and product, and you can see if you go up to their resources, they break it down by these different categorical areas. And this is a very common way that companies break down content. They break it down by content type. I don't always love this approach because it's very rare that someone is going to want to go look at all the ebooks or all the blogs. It's just not the way in which people consume information. Very much we all are trying to solve our own problems. And so it's much better in my experience, instead of slicing your content by types, it's better to group it by who does it appeal to. So Nektar is selling to, I believe we're talking a lot about RevOps and sales and kind of really the interaction between operations and sales and product and customer support. I mean, RevOps is kind of running that full gamut all the way through all these different functional areas. And so it'd be a lot better to have content that's highly relevant to a CEO, to a CFO, to perhaps like the financial ops person, right? Depending on the size of the company. And so breaking up your resources in that way, just kind of out of the gate here, is going to be a much better way to silo your content together. And so let's dig in from there of what is the best way to do that. So they've got all this content. They've got quite a bit on their site. And I just want to show you an example of how we do it for clients typically, which is really taking every piece of content here and defining who the persona is and then breaking it down into a content category. So you can think of this a lot like how people tag blogs, but it's also having all those tags live under a specific persona, so that as we create a resource page and we create content and how it links together, we're making sure that if we're talking about funding for a CEO and founder, we have options here where we could link to all these other different funding pieces. And then we also have the stages. So we know if I've got a top funnel piece about common roadblocks, then I could link to this mid-funnel case study piece related to boosting revenue with RevOps, right? And so those are highly related. So if someone was reading this piece, we know that we could link to this, and it's likely going to be really valuable for whomever is reading it. If you have interest in this, you might also be interested in this other piece. And so once this is completed, what you're going to be able to see is where your gaps are. And this is a simple pivot table that we've used in this example, where you can see the pieces of content and where we have mid-funnel, and you can see we have no bottom funnel things related to funding here. We have no bottom funnel related to board reporting or mid-funnel, right? And so in this category, we know we have a gap in information. And so from these top funnels, we're really going to struggle to push people deeper into the funnel because there's just not content to support it right now. So this is going to illuminate really quickly for you where you're missing the mark in terms of converting people. And it's going to give you good insight into what you need to be doing in your content calendar over the next 3-6 months to be able to fill those gaps. So once you've gone through this exercise, it's good to kind of do it and not manipulate it later on and be like, oh, well, I'll reclassify this piece as mid-funnel up here because I'm missing one. It's like, no, that you already identified it does not belong here. So let's make sure we produce a piece in the future that can fit the mid-funnel and the bottom funnel. And I will say, as we jump back over here, this is super valuable to have an ongoing running master list of all your content that you have on the site. And you can use something like I believe we used like Screaming Frog in this situation, at least just get the initial URLs, and then doing some filtering down by, does it contain blog, right? And then, if you've got 400, think about it this way. Yes, I know going through 400 pieces and doing this is a bit time consuming, but all that effort's been put into producing all of this content. And so the more content you have that you're having to categorize, the greater impact it should have by categorizing the content. So it's almost like the effort and the payoff scale together. And in fact, the payoff probably scales even faster. And so the more content you have, the more valuable going through this process becomes, even if it is a bit time consuming. Once you kind of have it set, each new piece you produce, you're just adding it to the bottom and plugging it in and jumping over to your content gap here and able to say, all right, I know now that I needed a mid-funnel. I've added it. It's mid-funnel. It's going to automatically pop up right here. And I'm going to know that I could link these pieces straight to that mid-funnel piece. Another that you might consider adding is for all your mid-funnel, just adding another drop-down here. And it'll be, resource to link to. And that way you're tracking what every one of them's linking to, particularly if you have like a main call to action on that blog. All right. And by the way, if you message me, just send me a DM or shoot me an email. I'm happy to share kind of what we use as a template here to at least get you started so you don't have to reinvent the wheel here. So what do we do with this? I always like visualizing this. I think it's extremely helpful to just have a visual that someone in the company can jump to and easily see, like, what are the pieces of mid-funnel content I should be linking to. And someone should be managing this, but we've created a Miro board here. And you can see we've broken it down by persona, topic hub, funnel, mid-funnel, bottom funnel, right? And what we've done is we've identified all these different sections. So these would be, if we went back over here, the content category. So for, let's just say, this is going to illustrate it better. For I will guess see my persona is VP Director of Finance, the topics we want to talk about here are cash management, financial accuracy, compliance, and FinOps metrics, right? And within each of those, we can see we've got 6 pieces of content here, and this is the mid-funnel piece that we should connect to. It's the only one we have. So for these 6 pieces, they're gonna, the call to action, or whether there's a pop-up on the page, whether it's kind of a sidebar sticky, we'll talk about those in a second. However we're kind of putting it on the blog, however we're pushing people to it, this would be the one we're linking to. For this one, we've got 2 options. For this one, compliance, we didn't have mid-funnel in this instance, so it was a gap. And then this one had 68 pieces and only 3 to link to. This one has a lot of content in it. It may even make sense to break this one down further. So right now, didn't really have a great way to break this down for this particular instance, but it could be an instance in the future where we split these out, and then we would need some more resources likely to connect them to. And so this really is done over and over across the different personas in order to create a very clear mapping of what content we need to be linking to. And then in these, there's just one that we're going to link all of them to, and then this one had some different pages that we could link to based on what the content types were. All right, so let's look at a few examples of how this then manifests itself into an actual page, right, where content's linked together. So this is a company hub staff that is trying to focus their hub on time tracking in this instance. So what it is they've got the benefits, right, and they've got, for benefits, they've provided these linkings to these different areas and pieces of content they have. And then it goes down to how to use it, and they've got all these pieces related. So they've kind of made this a bit of a sales / resource hub page, which is a bit different than how Atlassian has done it, where they've just really taken a very clear, like, hey, here's everything related to project management that we have in order of how you want to learn it. So it's much more like a learning track approach. And then they're implementing on this kind of main, what I'd call like a cornerstone piece for agile project management. They've got all the kind of related articles that you can still see on the left side here. And then they've got their call to action up at the top for like using this Jira template. And so it's highly specific to agile project management. Likely they're focusing on people who are using Jira, and then they've provided that template. And then if you went through, you would see that they've got just a lot of links throughout, in addition to these baseline components that are used to be very intentional about linking, to where they can just use whatever the copy presents to be able to link to these different options throughout. Really like this example. I think both of them have their values depending on who your audience is, but doing one or the other of these is more valuable than not doing anything at all. Let's put it that way. So let's take a look at Nektar and dive in to their on page. So we've talked about linking this stuff together. So they've got these recommended blogs. I really like the stickies that they have on the side here. One of them is a bit of a table of contents where you can kind of jump down. This is great. I think the one ad I would have here that would improve this a little more would be that it has some sort of UI, some sort of indicator here that shows me where I am in the blog as I scroll. It's already sticky, so as I get to this section, to be able to just highlight, now you're here, and then I can jump where I need to. The recommended blogs, hard for me to say if they've done this process we talked about at the beginning, but this is where we would utilize it to say, okay, I know that these, let's go back to this. I know that these 4 are all related, and this is the blog that we're on currently. Let's go ahead and link to these 3 in the related. So it makes it very easy to identify what are the pieces of content you're going to link up together. And pro tip, I like color coding these just so that I know that these 4 content categories all belong together. These 4 are all related to, I think, CEO, founder. These might be to CFO, etc. It just makes your life a lot easier as you're categorizing these. So jumping back over to the blog, they've got this pop-up. I don't love pop-ups, but I'll say test it, right? This wouldn't be one where I would tell a client, do not put this on your site. What I would say is, let's test having it here versus maybe a sticky component versus maybe having just right below, maybe right here or further down on the page, having it just as an inline image, right? And I might have an example in here. Yeah, something like this, right? So there's like this inline CTA that makes it look a lot cleaner. One other thing just to validate on here that we're linking to a resource of some sort on this page is there's a simple in GA4 an exploration you could do to just show how many people land on a funnel page, then end up visiting a non-top funnel page and then filling out a form, or how many end up visiting a resource page, right? How many end up going to another blog. There's a lot of different ways you could structure this, but I really want to understand how many pages, how well are people moving through, and do I have an issue, or at least setting a baseline so that when you do run a test, like adding that inline, you start to understand what things you did actually impacted the outcome. So making sure you're measuring that correctly. The other is doing a quick assessment to say how many of my pages actually link to a resource page. So if your conversion rate isn't great, it could be for one of a number of reasons. One, if you're not linking to any resource pages, and that's what you're measuring here, this number is going to be really bad. Maybe you are linking on every single page, but it's buried all the way down close to the footer, right? So understanding what's going on with your page. In this example, they had a pop-up come up, so I don't think there's an issue with not presenting a resource. It's just going to be a question of what is the optimal way to do it. And really the only way to learn that is to test for it. You can read 1,000 different articles about here's the best way to do it, but really it matters about your audience. Some are going to be more anti-pop-ups, which like I say, I'm anti-pop-up, but that's my own personal preference. That has nothing to do, I'm not the target audience here. So what my preference is doesn't really matter in this situation. I think the one other thing that I want to touch on in this that a lot of companies fall victim to is looking for any opportunity to link to any other blog on their site. And so we don't want to force the issue here, meaning we want the text that we're highlighting and linking to either A, be like this one is, where they've given a stat and then they're backing it up, right? And this is an outbound link. It's going to a different site. Same thing they've done here. They put a stat in and they link to it to McKinsey. Great sourcing, awesome. It's not a competitive keyword in here. You want to make sure you're not hyperlinking on text that you're trying to rank your own content for. Link to your own content if that's the case. If you already have, if you had this stat somewhere, you would want to link to your own content. I think the other one that I've seen in here is making sure that the text aligns with where you would expect the destination to be. And so I'll see if I can find a quick example here. I'm going to jump over to this one. So I've used, just so you know what tools I'm using, I'm using Ahrefs Chrome plugin here. And I've gone to the outgoing links, and I've just told it to highlight all the outgoing links on this page that are actually internal. So they're leaving this page but pointing to another page on the site, right? So this is a great example. End-to-end operating model. Great keyword. It's pointing to a blog that makes a lot of sense. What is revenue operations and why is it important? It seems pretty close. The other option would be like if you had a blog on like what are the different end-to-end operating models. That'd be a slightly better one to link to because that would probably be one where you're trying to rank it for that term. And then as I scroll down through here, I'm going to pull out one that's not a great example. Okay, so this one right here. RevOps acts as a bridge between team and leaders. It provides complete visibility or GTM, blah, 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 right? This is linking to a case study on how leading application security company achieved revenue data excellence. If I clicked on this, I'm reading through providing complete visibility. I am interested in what are some tactics for providing more visibility on my go-to-market activities? And while this is going to be a case study about Nektar helping someone achieve revenue data excellence, it's not quite as tight as I'd like to see. I'd much prefer to have a blog linked here that's talking specifically about tactics, and then right below have something about see how Nektar, like being very clear, see how Nektar.ai helped a IT company have better visibility on their GTM, right? That's aligning your messaging with expectations, because what you don't want is them to click on this and then end up on a resource that they have to download that doesn't even really fully match the terms here. So if I end up clicking on it, it goes into, it's not even a download. Yeah, I don't see a ton in here right out of the front that's going to show me how what I just clicked on is so relevant to visibility. I mean, so we get to pipeline visibility down here. There's a little bit, I mean, this could be an okay one. I just don't love going straight to a case study in this situation. Whereas up here, reduction in tech debt. This is RevOps guide to minimize technical debt. Like, there could not be a better match for using that term, that anchor text, and aligning it with the piece of content, the blog that we're linking to here. So this is a great example where there's going to be no ambiguity, and the one below feels a little forced, and there's a ton of links already. Like, look how many links that we have on this. This is not an issue of like needing to force something because you don't have enough content. So I think there's too much linking going on in this blog because some of the things are forced. If we had a perfect match for all these, I'd have no issue with it. All right, I think that covers bottom funnel. We're going to jump into a lot of different other areas, but so keep an eye out for some more videos that we're going to be posting here. Any questions, feel free to reach out. If there's any templates that you saw that we're using or tools that you have questions on or want access to, let me know.